Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are plunging straight into, well, really one of the most pressing environmental challenges, maybe logistical challenges too, facing the fashion industry: textile waste.
Yeah, the scale is just staggering, truly.
Yeah.
If you look at the big manufacturing hubs, take Bangladesh, it's dealing with maybe 577,000 tons of textile waste every year.
500,000 tons.
And then India, that number just balloons, 7.8 million
Pretty
tons
darn.
annually. And that's just from fabric mills and garment factories.
Wow. Okay, so that sheer volume, it has sparked a kind of revolution, hasn't it? We're seeing these incredible closed-loop recyclers pop up.
Exactly, the niche, as the academic literature often calls them.
Right. Companies like Recover, Re-and-Up, they've got these advanced technologies to turn this waste back into high-quality, almost virgin-like material.
And the ambition is huge. Sire, for instance, they've publicly stated a target of 3 million tons of recycling capacity by 2034.
3 million tons, but there's a catch, right?
There is. A big one. It's the sourcing bottleneck. These advanced processes, they need inputs of incredible purity.
Purity? How pure?
Well, a company like Recover might need pure cotton waste, okay? But with less than 5% non-cotton content, that's incredibly strict.
And the existing system, this sort of established waste network.
The regime, yeah. It's just not built for that. It's often fragmented, very informal, and frankly, incapable of meeting those high-purity, traceable supply demands.
So the tech is basically ready to go, but the supply chain that needs to feed it is, well, it's stuck in the past.
Pretty much. And that gap, that chasm, is exactly why this deep dive is so important today.
Okay, so we're going to be breaking down a specific paper, the dual brokerage role of digital platforms in the transition to a circular economy.
That's the one. It's authored by Quynh Do and Mark Stevenson, both affiliated with the Department of Management Science at Lancaster University in the UK.
And it feels incredibly timely.
Oh, absolutely. The whole move toward a textile circular economy is kind of stalled right now, not because the chemistry isn't there or the engineering.
Yeah.
It's the supply flow. Getting that consistent, compliant flow of waste is the real challenge.
So we need something or someone to bridge that gap.
Exactly. And this paper looks at that intermediary role. Specifically, it looks inductively, using a case study approach at one digital platform intermediary called Reverse Resources. Let's call them RR.
Okay, RR. And they operate where?
Within those really complex, often informal textile waste networks in Bangladesh and India.
Got it. And what I found fascinating reading this was the theoretical angle they take. The paper argues that, the usual way we think about brokers in networks.
Like the bridge builder, the tertius engines.
Or the one who profits from keeping people separate, the Gaudens.
Right, that classical brokerage theory. The authors say it's just not enough here. Because the problem isn't just that people aren't connected. It's these deep context-specific tensions between the innovative niche, the recyclers, and the established regime, the old networks. These tensions need active transformation, not just connection.
Active transformation. Okay, so what are these deep tensions?
Well, the paper identifies 3 key areas, 3 fundamental barriers that RR had to grapple with to even make circularity a possibility in these markets.
Okay, let's unpack those. Where do we start? Systemic issues.
Yeah, let's start with the structural tensions.
Yeah.
First off, the existing regime is just incredibly fragmented and really opaque.
Opaque.
Waste often passes through, say, 4 or 5 middlemen unnecessarily. Each takes a cut, inflating costs and making it totally impossible to trace where anything came from.
It's all under the table?
Largely, yeah. Transactions are mostly cash, off the books. Manufacturers are often really hesitant to share any data about their waste, maybe compliance fears, maybe just how it's always been done. RR's chief product officer actually called this lack of transparency the elephant in the room.
I can see why. If you can't see the flow, you can't plan. You certainly can't justify investing millions in a new recycling plant, can you?
Exactly. You need a predictable supply. You need data. And it's just not there in the traditional system.
Okay, so that's structural. Fragmented and hidden. What's the next barrier?
So if the first tension is you can't see the waste properly, the second is that even when you can see it, it's often not the right quality. These are the operational capability tensions.
Ah, the physical side of things. Contamination and stuff.
Precisely. The old regime, it's really geared towards low-value downcycling. Making rags, fillers, maybe cheap insulation material.
Not high-quality fiber for new clothes.
Definitely not. Manufacturers, their priority is production speed. Waste segregation, that's usually an afterthought, if it happens at all.
So everything gets mixed together.
Right. And that leads to contamination rates that can be as high as 20% right at the source. You get different fiber types mixed, dyes, sometimes even hazardous stuff like needles.
Which makes it useless for those high-tech recyclers needing, say, 95% pure cotton.
Exactly. And the local waste handlers, who are often very skilled in their own way, they usually lack the specific knowledge about the complex chemical and composition requirements set by these new recyclers. Their expertise is in sorting for the old downcycling markets.
Okay, so fragmented network, poor quality material, that's already a huge challenge. What's the third tension?
The third one is really critical. It's the socially sustainable capability tension.
Meaning the human element, labor conditions.
Yes. These informal networks often rely on precarious labor. You have workers, sometimes earning as little as, say, $50 a month, manually sorting through waste, often in hazardous conditions without proper safety gear.
That's a huge red flag for global brands and recyclers.
It's a massive ethical dilemma. They need to build supply chains that meet standards like the Global Recycle Standard, GRS or RCS certified, and the informal regime often falls way short of that.
So RR wasn't just facing a simple supply chain coordination problem. They were tackling structural economics, physical quality control, and really fundamental social justice issues.
All at once. It seems almost impossible for one digital platform to fix all of that.
So how did they do it? What's the paper's central idea?
That's where we get to the core finding. To actually bridge this enormous gap effectively, the platform RR, in this case, had to adopt what we authors call a dual brokerage role.
Dual role.
And this isn't just about connecting A to B. It's about actively intervening in two distinct ways. And this dual role framework, the paper argues, is what's needed to manage relationships and the physical flow of materials in these really tough closed-loop systems.
Interesting. So what are the two roles in this dual brokerage?
Role one is structural brokerage. This aims squarely at those structural tensions we talked about, the fragmentation, the opacity. It's about creating a transparent, efficient network structure.
Makes sense. Connect the right people, cut out the unnecessary steps.
Right. But role two is where it gets really insightful, I think. That's capability brokerage.
Capability brokerage. What does that involve?
This goes way beyond just connecting people. It's about actively fixing the skills gaps and formalizing practices. It tackles those operational and social capability tensions head on. It's about upgrading the ability of the network, not just its shape.
Okay, this is fascinating. Let's dig into how RR actually put these roles into practice. Starting with structural brokerage, how did they tackle that fragmentation and that elephant in the room, the opacity?
They used a strategy the paper calls semi-disintermediation.
Semi-disintermediation. Okay, break that down.
So the RR platform connects the recyclers and the manufacturers directly. That immediately cuts out a lot of those opportunistic middlemen who were just trading waste along a chain, inflating costs without really adding much value.
So it creates efficiency and visibility right away.
Yes. But here's the crucial semi part.
I was wondering.
Yeah.
Because fully disintermediating, just cutting everyone out, could wipe out livelihoods, couldn't it? Especially for those existing waste handlers.
Exactly. And RR recognized that. So they don't eliminate all the physical intermediaries. Instead, they keep the essential waste handlers involved, but they completely redefine their role.
How so?
They shift them from being opaque traders to becoming formalized service providers. They get paid directly by the recycler or through the platform to perform specific value-adding functions like proper sorting according to specs, baling, logistics.
So they become part of a formalized value-adding service layer rather than just speculators in a hidden market.
Precisely. It incentivizes them to participate and professionalize. And the results were apparently quite dramatic. The paper mentions that manufacturers using the platform saw their earnings from waste jump by up to 300%.
300%. That's a powerful incentive to change behavior.
Absolutely. And beyond the money, the real power of this structural work is the data-oriented value creation it enables.
The data, right.
The platform generates real-time traceable data. Waste mapping, volumes, compositions, chain of custody, all generating official reports for compliance, even carbon footprint calculations.
So that hidden data suddenly becomes visible and valuable.
It becomes a strategic asset. It's vital for brands needing to prove compliance, essential for recyclers making those huge investment decisions, and potentially useful for policymakers too. It provides that verifiable link, often missing in traditional certification.
Okay, so structural brokerage fixes the network map and brings transparency. Now, what about capability brokerage? How did RR use a digital platform to fix physical things like factory floor contamination or skills gaps?
That required a really robust standardization strategy. They understood that factory managers weren't going to adopt complex new procedures that slowed down production.
Right. Production is king.
So the solution had to be simple and integrated. RR provided really clear, easy-to-follow guidelines and training both online and offline, focused on segregation right at the cutting table.
So separating the cotton scraps from the polyester scraps right when they're cut instead of mixing them all up.
Exactly. Segregation by composition, by color, right at the source. They framed it as a simple change that wouldn't hamper productivity, but would create immense value downstream. Create a kind of passport of waste from the very beginning.
Clever. And what about the waste handlers downstream?
They disseminated best practices and knowledge about handling standards and, crucially, the specific requirements of the high-tech recyclers. This was about actively shifting mindsets and practices away from the default of just downcycling.
Upgrading their skills and knowledge to meet the niche's demands. Okay, that covers the operational side. But what about the social dimension? The precarious labor, the ethical concerns? How did capability brokerage address that?
That was handled through what the paper terms a legitimization strategy.
Legitimization?
Yeah, essentially working to bring these informal or semi-formal actors into the legitimate, compliant economy. RR developed a code of conduct for the waste handlers they worked with, aligning it with international labor and safety standards.
Did they enforce it? Audits?
They did conduct in-person factory visits and basic audits. Not super comprehensive, maybe, but checking for minimum compliance on key things, fire safety, first aid, ensuring no abuse.
Was it a pass-fail, immediate exclusion kind of thing? That could be tough on small operators.
No, and it's really important to their approach. They didn't demand instant perfection. It was more like a B Corp approach, as the paper puts it. They required waste handlers to show willingness to improve. They'd work with them, set fair timelines for reaching compliance milestones. The goal was integration, not exclusion.
Ah, so bringing them into the formal, ethical supply chain gradually, rather than just shutting them out. Formalization itself becomes a pathway to better conditions.
Exactly. It's transformation through inclusion, which is arguably much more sustainable in the long run.
So we have the dual roles, structural and capability, and these strategies, semi-disintermediation, standardization, legitimization. But the paper mentioned one more piece, identity work. Why was that necessary for RR?
Well, RR was a new venture, right? Challenging decades of established practice in very entrenched markets. They had what academics call the liability of newness. Nobody knew who they were. Why should anyone trust them or change their ways?
They needed credibility.
Desperately. So they had to actively build their identity. Part of that was articulating a completely novel value proposition, focusing on data, challenging the industry's assumption that waste figures were basically known or unimportant.
Making the invisible visible and valuable.
Yes. They also use relatable analogies, apparently calling themselves the Uber of textile waste, to make the concept more graspable.
Okay, that helps.
And crucially, they strategically went after prestigious grants and awards like the H&M Global Change Award, support from P4G Partnership for Green Growth, and the Global Goals. Winning those gave them external validation, legitimacy, and access to key partners and resources.
So building their own brand was essential to being able to implement the brokerage strategies.
It was an enabling factor, absolutely. You need trust and standing to convince people to change deeply ingrained habits and systems.
Okay, stepping back then, looking at the big picture from this research, what does this case study of RR and its dual brokerage role really tell us about accelerating the transition to a circular economy, particularly in textiles?
Well, theoretically, I think it's a really valuable contribution. It pushes brokerage theory beyond just looking at the broker's intent, are they trying to connect or exploit, towards recognizing these context-dependent dual roles, structural and capability, that are needed to manage specific tensions during a messy transition like this one. It's empirically grounded, showing how it works in practice.
And for people actually working in the industry or making policy, what are the practical takeaways?
I think the first big one is just reinforcing that the main bottleneck for true circularity right now often isn't the recycling technology itself. It's building the supply network transparent, efficient, ethical, that can consistently feed that technology at scale.
And digital platforms are key to that network architecture.
They seem to provide that essential foundation for managing the complexity of reverse flows, especially across borders and fragmented markets.
Okay, takeaway 1. Focus on the supply network infrastructure. What else?
Takeaway 2 is the undeniable value of waste data. It's not just a boring reporting requirement anymore. This paper shows it's a genuine strategic asset.
For everyone involved.
Yes. For recyclers, it informs billion-dollar investment decisions. For brands, it's crucial for compliance, transparency, and hitting sustainability targets. For policymakers, it allows for much more targeted incentives or regulations. Data makes the whole system smarter.
And the third takeaway, it feels like it has to be about the social dimension.
Absolutely. This study highlights a really novel and potentially powerful pathway for social inclusion. By formalizing these informal waste handlers, providing training, and incentivizing compliance through market access.
You create a legitimate entry point for them into global supply chains.
Exactly. It offers a potential route towards what the International Labor Organization calls decent work opportunities within the circular economy, rather than leaving these vulnerable workers behind. It shows digital tools can bridge that gap between high-tech innovation and, the realities of informal on-the-ground work.
So to recap, we've seen how a digital platform, acting as a dual broker, has to perform both structural work, fixing the network, and capability work, upgrading skills and standards. And this has to be underpinned by building its own legitimacy through identity work. That's how you start to bring a complex circular system to life in these challenging markets.
It's a really compelling model for how to manage these transitions.
It really is. But it does leave us with a final thought to chew on, doesn't it? The paper clearly shows the massive benefits of this newfound data transparency for pretty much everyone involved. But as more and more of this waste flow data becomes centralized, visible, traceable, especially data from actors who used to operate completely off the radar, we have to ask, what are the potential downsides? Could this increased transparency lead to new kinds of power asymmetry? Could sophisticated players use this data opportunistically against smaller actors, even if they are now formalized? What about data security in these newly connected global chains?
That's a really important point. Formalization and transparency bring benefits, but they also create new vulnerabilities and power dynamics that need careful consideration.
Definitely something to keep a very close eye on as this absolutely necessary transition to a circular economy continues to accelerate.